Hi, it's Jackie. Here's a new episode of Badass Superstar Selling Show. You want to be my guest? Click on the link below. Hope you enjoy the episode. Hi everyone, Jackie Rainforth from the Badass Superstar Selling Show. Today we've got Helen Rose from thegiftofbeingpresent.com. Today we are going to talk about grief and loss, personal disaster. What does that mean and when should you reach out? So Helen, please, tell us. When people talk to me and people say grief, when you said grief counselor, grief, I thought of death. That's right. Yeah. That's what I think of. Is that the stereotype?
It totally is. And I think that's the whole point to doing what I do is that we typically think of grief as only relatable to death, when in fact it is all about loss and whatever that loss is for you. And what I love is that we are in a time now that we can talk about this subject because in the past you weren't really talking about it, right? And I remember the first time I heard the word grief, I had written my book, 53 Grove Road, and someone had said, oh my boy, you've had a lot of grief. And I remember going, huh? What's that mean? Yeah. And so then I really started exploring it, and we really don't talk about it enough as part of life, because it is part of life. Right. So that's kind of my mission now, is to get everyone comfortable with loss and comfortable with the emotion that goes along with loss. So it's not such a taboo. We tend to prioritize each other's grief.
So I mean, it's perfect timing. I think there's so much grief, there's so much personal disaster, there's so much loss going on right now, either, with families and financially and economically and businesses shutting down, and there's just so much going on.
Yeah, I think we're in a collective anticipatory grief period, because we don't know what is forward for us.
Right.
And so I think, and it's very frightening. And you see people like almost going into a state of limbo where they're like, well, they don't know which way to do. They don't know what decision to make. They don't know what their next steps should be. So it causes a lot of anxiety for people.
I think anxiety is, I think that is a common denominator for all of them.
Yeah.
What are some other commonalities of grief and loss? What else is there that really, that you can identify, that people going through it identify and say, oh, okay, maybe I am going through grief and loss right now.
Right, and it's important to know when the event first happens, you kind of go into shock. You're actually not in grief mode then. I wrote an article, it's called How Many Lasagnas Do You Have in Your Freezer? Because if we're going to talk about a death, is like all of a sudden someone passes away, you got the whole community there and they're bringing over lasagna for some reason. Yeah. Lasagna seems to be the one. But so people are bringing that, and so you go into this weird do mode because you're trying to figure out, like you're all of a sudden, like kind of just standing there. So you're trying to figure out where you're at.
Right.
And then 2 weeks pass, everyone's gone on with their life, because that's what people do.
Yes.
And you're standing there going, well, hold on, I haven't even begun to absorb, figure out, process any of that. So that's one commonality, is people feel very alone. Now, they, not always. Obviously, there's some situations you have your band and your legions of friends that are around you, right? But even beyond that, they don't necessarily understand how you feel.
Right.
So there's that one, you feel very lost. Mm-hmm. You could feel a lot of despair.
Yes.
It's frightening.
Especially the financial, right?
Yeah,
that can be,
for sure.
For people who lose their homes, and that's devastating for the whole family, not just, the breadwinner or mom and dad, but
does a number on your ego,
for
sure.
Oh, ego, yeah.
Yeah.
Is ego part of loss? Is there something around that?
Well, kind of. I mean, I always hear when people's like, get your ego out of it and stuff. Well, I think that's true. It is us.
It is.
And so, of course, we take that stuff personally.
Of course.
How could you not?
Yes.
And so I think it again is being able to talk about it where people feel comfortable saying, it's easy to pick the low-hanging fruit of, glad, sad, mad, happy.
Yeah.
But underneath all of that is really where it starts. And so you just need to give it time. And when you said earlier, about the time piece, whatever time means for you, it's your personal journey, nobody else's. And this is where, when you're dealing with loss, where couples are involved, maybe a loss of a house, a job, children, God
Oh,
forbid.
oh,
Don't
yeah.
even go there. Those two individuals, even though they're one together, they still grieve differently.
Yes.
They're still processing it differently.
Yes.
Yeah.
And they're so interconnected too. And it's almost like, don't they create a snowball effect in terms of even more personal disaster? Like,
Yeah.
you know, I know people that have lost children, which is probably I can't even
I think
fathom
it's the
how
worst.
horrific that could be.
Yeah.
And then, you know, because they experience grief differently, they end up getting divorced. And then they
start going this way because one maybe is, I never like to use that word healing, but one is processed it faster or differently than the other. So the other gets the frustration comes in.
Mm-hmm.
So it's all that little bit, right? So it really is just blows you apart until you can kind of grab all the little pieces again and
Right.
start to figure it out.
Right.
Right?
So for people that are going through these experiences, you can help them, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So if they identify as, okay, I'm going through this, I'm having these emotions, you know, if they read your book, 53 Grove Street?
53 Grove Road.
Grove Road.
Yeah.
53 Grove Road, everybody. Get the book.
Yeah.
I'm sure it's
Thanks,
filled
Jackie.
with all sorts of great stuff.
Well, there's lots of layers to it.
Right.
Right?
Okay.
And I think when we're on that grief too, on that journey of loss and grief, is that we forget that everyone else around us has had a journey with grief and loss. Like it's a really intricate thing,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, when you were talking about family and friends, I think family and friends are not equipped to handle it. And I think a lot of times, I know when I've been through going through things, whether it's, you know, the loss of, you know, personal ones or whatever, people don't know what to say.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Such a big part to this is like, what are some of the dumbest things that someone has said to you? And I believe in my heart, always well-intentioned.
Always well-intentioned.
But I have a friend who had 3 children. She lost 2.
Oh.
And someone said to her, oh, well, thank God you still have your daughter. And she's like, yeah, because they're all interchangeable. And that anger just fired her up. Of course.
Yeah.
Now, the person who said it was trying to find something to we can't handle other people's emotion.
No, we cannot. No.
That's why I love what I do, because when you put on that coach hat,
yes,
you don't. It's not that you don't feel and you're not empathic. Of course you are, because that's what you do for work.
Right.
But you're able to stand outside and not take any of that anger personally. You're not able to take any. Your job isn't to make them feel better. Your job is to bring them to a place where they can come to terms with what they're feeling.
Wow, that's great. Well, let's talk about that in the next session, because I'm sure you've got a lot of valuable nuggets that you can share with the audience about that. And again, we have Helen Rose from thegiftofbeingpresent.com, correct?
That's correct.
And she's got a great new book.
53 Grove Road.
Right.
Yeah.
It's filled with great stories, right?
Yeah.
And I know you don't like the word, but healing, correct?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right. Yes.
Well, it is healing.
It is healing. It is healing, because you do need to heal from disaster and loss and grief. Anyway, let's see you next session. We look forward to seeing you all. Thanks for joining us. We will see you on the next episode of Badass Superstar Selling. That's all the time we have for today. Thank you so much for joining us. Listen, if you want to subscribe, you can follow us on YouTube, LinkedIn, and Facebook. We have new content coming out every day. You don't want to miss it.